Okay, good evening. It is 7 o'clock on January 10th, 2023. I'd like to call to order the Evanston Preservation Commission meeting. We have a quorum with 7 commissioners present. I am going to jump right into old business with the first case of 2211 Sherman Avenue. And Kay, do you want me to just, do you need any background, or do you want me to
I
just?
can just read it into the record.
All right.
2211 Sherman Avenue in the Northeast Historic District, case number 22 PRES 0220. Fosterdale Architects applicant requests a certificate of appropriateness to alter the home's east, north, and south elevations fenestration, remove an existing rear covered entryway, and construct an overhead canopy above a new wood deck at the home's rear volume. The applicant has requested that this case be withdrawn pending resubmission at a date uncertain. And we don't need to take any action.
Okay, with that, why don't we move straight into new business for the evening? First case is 1705 Lincoln Street in the Landmark. Do you want to read it into record, Cade? And then we'll ask Gary to step up to the podium.
1705 Lincoln Street. It's an individual landmark property, case number 22 PRES 0238. Shoemaker Design and Build Associates, applicant and architect, requests a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a single-story addition and construct a new single-story addition at the home's rear north volume, as well as alter the home's fenestration and applicable standards, demolition 1 through 5, alteration 1 through 10, and construction 1 through 5 and 7 through 15. Gary, whenever you're ready.
There we go. Good evening. My name is Gary Shoemaker. I'm with Shoemaker Design Associates. I'm here on behalf of my clients who own the property at 1705 Lincoln Street. We've been engaged to remodel a portion of the interior of this house and to create an addition off of the back of the house, which we're showing in the rendering here. We've taken several cues from this house. Some of you may remember this house. It was before the commission many years ago when it was under a pretty substantial remodeling. We've maintained a lot of the work that the Preservation Commission worked with the previous owner to achieve on this house. We have continued replicating the outriggers and the details on the soffit work, which are part of the original fabric of the house. We've maintained a number of the wide eaves and overhangs and trim conditions throughout this house. Recreated a lot of the brick base and limestone coursework that was also reestablished as part of the prior remodelings on this house. And if you go to the next slide for me, please. We have enlarged, we're replacing the addition on the back of the house, but we've taken cues from the existing house and the check rails to establish datum that run around the house in order for us to create a mudroom and entrance on the back of the house, which enters at grade and then rises up, as you can see, several feet to the main floor on the inside of the house. So we've taken the cues from the additions that were some original and some acquired over the course of the history in this house to continue these eaves and these soffits around the house. Go to the next slide for me. This is the existing eave condition and roof condition that I spoke of. The base sits on top of it. The existing addition in the dining room in the house extends out beyond that. So we've continued that cornice and that eave line around with a low slope roof to connect that. You can go to the next slide for me. This is the addition we're moving from the back of the house. It's an unheated, uninsulated lean-to structure of sorts that's been kind of weatherized. It leads into an open basement stair that was enclosed as part of this addition. So this piece on the back of the house was certainly not original to the house. Our addition is probably twice as deep, continuing the eave line from that corner here around, creating a nice large glass opening, connections to the inside, and a view of what, if you've been by the site, is a glorious side yard and view of the corner of that property. So this is the existing condition. We've shown these to indicate, if you've seen it, the number of trim details, scallop details, shingle details that exist on this house. We've replicated, and we're going to continue a number of those. Most of those details, if not all, were replicated during the previous restoration of this house, so we feel confident we can replicate those again. So, if you could have the next slide, please. Again, here's the small entrance addition off the back that encloses that existing stair. This is our proposed addition on the back. This is the existing roof line of the house. This is part of an addition we're keeping. This is a re-entrant corner that we've adapted and continued on the back of the house. If you go to the next slide for me. So we've extended this out and continued this section of the roof line so that we don't affect many of these elevations in the proportions of the existing structure. The existing structure that we're removing, you can see that small door in the back. These are uninsulated storm windows or glass storm panels, and our new addition tucked over here. Again, that's the existing addition coming down. This is the cornice and the roof line that we're trying to maintain and extend through here. And you can see the datum and the alignments that we've continued from the existing house. And the fenestration we've added to the sunroom and the addition on the back. This elevation is the backside. This section is existing. We've extended roughly that section of the house. This isn't visible from the public way. It's tucked behind fences between the side yards and in a pretty tight condition. So as a reference, this is the distance we're extending it. We're removing skylights from that side of the house, but again, none of that's visible from the public way. Examples of the cornice details, the trim details, and the gutter work that's on the house, along with the shingles that we're replicating and continuing throughout the house. This is an example of the brickwork and the concrete, the limestone sills on the house that we're also continuing to replicate. This is trim work that was replaced on the house during the previous renovation. We are keeping this where it makes sense and where we're not affecting it. On the back of the house, we're going back to the more traditional corner boards that exist on the remaining portions of the house. The windows we're proposing in this addition are going to be Marvin Ultimate casement windows, which are also Landmark Series windows. They will be clad windows. And I think, yeah, and Kate had asked us, that's the alley view of the house, so you can see the portion of that existing addition here. So our additional will extend that piece with the glass transoms above. So. Okay. I think that's the last slide, is it not? I think it is, yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any questions by commissioners?
I have a question. Hi.
Sure.
Could you speak to the door that you're going to alter or replace? You're going to change the side door on the left there to a French door?
We are. This is a non-original door to the house. It's an entry door with two side light panels that are quite narrow. We are going to change that out for a more typically fenestrated French door. That opens into what will be the kitchen in the house. So we're seeking to gain more light and access into that. They use the side door and this side porch, which was also an addition to the house, as access for their dogs into the side yard. So.
Any other questions? Okay, Gary, if you want to take a seat. Thank you. Are there any items we'd like to discuss? Or do commissioners feel that the project meets the standards, and would someone like to make a motion? Go ahead, Stuart.
Oops. I move that we grant a certificate of appropriateness to 1705 Lincoln Street It's a landmark, 22 Pres 0238. To certificate of appropriateness to demolish a single-story addition and construct a new single-story addition at the home's rear volume and minimally alter the home's fenestration. Applicable standards for demolition are 1 through 5, alteration 1 through 10, and construction 1 through 5 and 7 through 15.
Is there a second? Beth seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed? And the motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Okay, Cade, would you like to read the next case into record, please?
1713 Asbury Avenue in the Ridge Historic District, case number 23 PRES 0001. Chad Lefkowitz, applicant, requests a certificate of appropriateness to replace selected wood windows, double-hung casement and fixed, from the side, north, the south, and rear east facades. Replacement windows are Renewal by Andersen Fibrix windows, which closely match size, style, and configuration of the windows to be replaced. Applicable standards, alteration 1 through 10.
Thank you so much. I'm Chad Lefkowitz with Renewal by Andersen. I'm here to represent Mr. Dennis Barber, who resides at 1713 Asbury Avenue. It's my first time ever presenting, so I do apologize in advance. I am not an architect, so my drawings are probably not going to be as detailed as the previous ones. But we're here to replace a number of windows with the Renewal by Andersen Fibrix product. It's been approved numerous times within the Evanston Historical District. I do realize everything is done on a case-by-case basis, so I did bring samples if you haven't seen any of our product before. So I tried to draw up some different floor plans of the home. The windows that we are replacing, the majority are in the rear of the home, so they are not visible from the right-of-way of the street. So you can see here, we have 2 basement well windows, which are our type A windows, which are double-hung windows. If we go on to the next slide, we have a whole bunch of casement windows on the second floor plan of the house that are primarily facing the east. If I keep going. And then we have our third floor elevation. These are not original portions of the home. These were all additions through the years that just have some single panel wood windows that are all basically being locked using fisheye hooks. So unfortunately, the residents have been sitting in many of these rooms with space heaters that are going nonstop, driving up their utility costs, as well as forced to wear winter clothes. And since COVID, a number of the homeowners actually work 24 hours a day in many of these rooms, so they're really looking to make a number of improvements. So these are the various windows that we are replacing. We go down to the next slide. This is the front view of the home, which is located on the west side. We are not doing any of the windows that are located here. As we start to look at more of these pictures, as I'm moving counterclockwise around, we have our well window down at the bottom, and then towards the rear of the home up on the second level, we have a number of casement windows that we're going to replace in the back. So this is just a closer up view of that same south side of the home, kind of the eastern view, where you can see the second level where we have the type C with the casement windows, with the grills up towards the top portion. We're going to be mirroring those for the type Ds, which are up at the top, which are also single casement windows with the same identical matching grill patterns on there as well. The type E up towards the top right, on the third level, those are just single casement windows that never had a grill pattern when they were added to the home a number of years back. Next, we have a partial east-facing view of the home. It's a little bit closer view where we're going to be putting our type C windows and our type D windows in the back. We have a partial east-facing view of the home as well. We back up, there is a brick fence that separates the home from commercial property. Okay. Where we're just replacing the one casement window in the back, or double hung window in the back. And then last side of the home, we have the north-facing view of the home with a couple of the windows that we plan to replace that are all towards the rear of the home. Next is just another view so that you're able to see from the street where all of those are located as well. The house does have a detached garage, and we plan to replace some fixed panel windows that are actually on the side of the home and are actually blocked by a tree as well. Next, we have a number of the different sketches that try to compare the current type A windows versus the same type A window that we're going to replace. All of the windows are going to be done as insert or pocket installations. We are not doing a full tear out of the frames. So there will be a minimal amount of glass shrinkage, and it is actually shown in the diagrams what the difference is in the muntins. So this is the example of the A windows, which are in the well. And next up are pictures of what the current window looks like with a mock-up drawing of what the replacement window. So this is just an example of our double-hung window where we have the full divided light grills, so they are going to protrude on the exterior as well as protrude on the interior with stainless steel spacers in between, so it does give it that classical look. All of the coloring is going to continue to match, so even though this sample is in black, all of the windows will continue to maintain the same identical color. Our window type B is the windows that are in the back of the home, and basically they are also the double hung windows, but the grill pattern is going to match what's currently there so that we have that on the bottom as well. All of the grills have the same thickness as the original grill. The difference is in a little bit of the shrinkage on the glass. So then you can see there's a closer picture of window type B that we're going to be replacing 3 of those windows. Moving right along, our window type C, this is where we have the casement windows, where we're going to have the muntins up towards the top portion only. They're also known as short fractional. Those will be custom designed by our factory to make sure that we're adhering to the same sight lines that are currently in place today. So this is located in our sitting room. And the sitting room is where a lot of the time is spent, and you can see from one of the closer viewed pictures, the windows are not even able to close shut. So they're beyond restoration at this point. There is no way to keep any of the air out from coming into any of those rooms. I do apologize that on the mock-up in my simulator, I didn't have the ability to show exactly where the muntins were going to line, so I did try to draw that on that for you, just so that you're able to see that we're going to follow the same identical suit. Okay. Next, we have our window type D, which is a single casement window with a 3x3 grill pattern. These are located, once again, in the sitting room. So we're going to match these identical. These are the type that currently use the fisheye hooks to try to keep them closed. And I do have a sample casement window over here as well, so that you can see exactly how that would look. Continuing on, the only change that we're actually making to the style of any of the windows is the windows that are facing in the rear of the home. They are on the 3rd floor office, so it's on the next slide. Today, there are actually double casement windows in the same identical room where we have single casement windows. So we were trying to have consistency throughout in that same room by matching the 3x3 single casement pattern. It also is going to be able to then add substantial amount of increase in terms of the glass because we're not having to have 2 separate panels. We're able to actually match the identical windows that we're going to be put into the room as well on the south-facing side. So that's what the new window would look like, and you'd be able to see here, that's what the current window looks like, and we would be able to match it so it's designed identical to the other 3 windows that are located in that same room. So this does face to the due eastern portion of the home with no visibility to the front. On the third level, there is a bedroom that must have been an addition where they just put some casement windows in there. There are no muntins in any of those windows. We're just following it identical with single casement windows. So you can see here with the current dimensions, what they look like and what we would be replacing them with. So they are completely uneven, and there is air that just continues to gape in all of those locations. Ironically, there's one window in that bedroom. For some reason, they put a double casement window in there, so we were actually going to follow suit and mirror it with a double casement window identically to where that is located. So we have one window type F that's in that same room. No muntins. And last but not least is the garage window. The one that's on the side of the garage that's being blocked by the tree. I did have new sketches that I had sent over to Carlos, but you're able to see we're able to put in 2 fixed panel insert windows to match identically in that garage as well. And that's the basics of the project.
Okay, thank you. Questions? So I actually have a couple questions.
Yeah.
I think I have difficulty with Fibrex windows. I think I'm probably one of the commissioners that has the most difficulty with Fibrex windows on historic homes. It's one of those new materials that just kind of is straddling that historic line right now of whether it's accepted by the Secretary of Standards or whether it's not, and where it's acceptable to use. So I guess a couple of my questions are, I don't struggle with the basement and the garage windows, of course, because they're you know, and I know we've approved basement windows with Fibrex before on homes. And to be honest, the third floor dormer where there's an addition, that's a non-original addition, where you had the casement windows. Again, those are fairly straightforward windows. What is the other areas? Are those original, like those original parts of the home from 1881? Do you mind, I'm sorry, do you mind if you, it will just go, that way we can get it on record. If you could introduce yourself and then.
I'm Dennis Barber. I'm owner of the house. The back portion you saw there, the windows that face out to the YWCA and the side windows there, as you pointed out, they're not original. About 20 years ago, someone added a kitchen and took on the top and extended that out. So none of that is, the rest of it, the main part of the house that he was showing you there.
Can you bring up those pictures, Kate, of the elevations, please?
It's page 47. It'd be the side facing south and the other one facing north.
So that's a non-original, obviously, dormer.
That's not original.
Okay, and then Kate, go to the, I guess it would be the east. Though,
That would be original there.
both the second and the third floor?
Yes, those
Okay.
two that you see in that picture.
Okay.
And those, see just the back, you can see where the dividing point is there,
Mhm.
where the 3 levels are, and then where the addition has been made.
Okay. And for those windows, are there, I assume there's profile brick molds? And how do you propose to handle that with the new Anderson window?
So obviously, we're doing them as insert windows, so we're going to cut out and we're going to leave the existing framing on there. The plan is to potentially aluminum coil over
Okay.
the brick mold up to the stucco area.
Okay, and you'll match the profiles is the intention? Okay. And then I assume it's, I believe that you've talked with Carlos and Kate. The front windows, of course, would be something that may have to get addressed separately since they're the front primary facade. If you were going to use, for instance, the Fibrex windows may not be appropriate on the front facade. I assume as an owner, you're aware of that potential that you might have different types of windows.
No, we've talked to Carlos many times. I don't remember hearing that.
So I think that's something that the commission should take into account, that if we approve the Fibrex windows for the secondary facades for the rear, how does that then affect the primary facade. If for any reason in the future, you come back, if we have the thought that that wouldn't be appropriate on the front, I think it's appropriate to maybe make that comment now.
Can I ask you to just summarize why? Why they may not be appropriate on the front for people that might not be
It's-
familiar with these
It's
windows?
not that they won't, I just don't know, and I know that the commission in the past has not approved Fibrex windows on any case for a primary facade that isn't a project that's, for instance, in 1950s, 1960s, that it's very simple. I believe the last Fibrex windows we approved were steel original windows that had very simple profiles, and it was on a secondary facade. Other than new construction, I do not know of any project that we've approved Fibrex for a primary facade.
Okay. Susie?
Yeah,
I'm-
I was just thinking that there might be folks that might not understand what the issue is with a Fibrex window particularly, so it has to do with the profiles.
It's not necessarily, it's a little bit of the matching of the profiles, but if that can be achieved, I think that was overlooked. I think it was more of the matching of the material. And I'm not saying that that's not necessarily changing with the Secretary standards. I mean, the last one we came in front of us was probably a year ago.
Yeah. Since you've brought samples, Susie, I wonder if we'll have a chance to actually examine them. I've never specified or
Yeah, why
looked
don't you bring it up
closely at a
onto-
Fibrex window, and I would like the opportunity to do so. But I'd also like to point out that originally when simulated divided lights with spacer bars came out, they weren't being accepted because they were basically an ersatz version of the original divided light windows. I think there was the same problem with cladding, which is now almost universally done. People don't want to maintain houses in the way in which they used to. So I'd like to look at those windows. But I have another comment which you partially addressed. I was sort of curious about how many of the windows you're replacing are original to the house and how many of them are from a later date. And my first impression looking at the house is that the windows are the result of somebody having thrown a window catalog at this poor building. It's such a hodgepodge, and I'm wondering about the decision, for instance, not to try and go back and say, you know, we've got casements which are divided lights, and we've got casements which are not divided lights. When we replace the non-divided light casements, should we, in sympathy with the house, put buttons in them? We've got double hung windows, and I don't know whether the double hung windows were original to the house or not. You know, generally, a house will be all double hung windows or all casement windows, and I'm wondering, you know, whether in that case somebody would have looked at the situation and said, well, gee, you know, we can replace this with a casement because we feel like the predominant theme of the house is divided light casement windows. So, you know, I wonder about the decision to just replace what's there, as if what's there was some sort of ideal pre-existing condition.
Our understanding was we wanted to look as much.
Sorry, do you mind?
Oh, use the mic.
I'm sorry.
Our understanding was we wanted to make it look as much like it does now as possible. And you're right, the house is a hodgepodge, and that's not just the windows. So, yes, probably what you said. They were put in at various times by various people with different plans, so that's the way it is.
Yeah, if you want to go look at it, and if there are any questions, we'll finish up with questions and then we'll ask for public comment.
I just have a quick question about material. Is it kind of like an aluminum clad window? Like the paint is on the Fibrex material?
So the
right?
paint is actually baked into the Fibrex on the exterior. So there's absolutely no maintenance to our product. It was engineered and designed over 35 years ago. So it is 40% wood fibers combined together with 60% proprietary polymers. So the idea behind it is it's a completely maintenance-free product that is not going to buckle under pressure like a vinyl window would. It's going to have the strength and look of a wood product, but it's not going to rot over time. And it is the only product that Renewal by Andersen has. So it's not like I have a wood-cladded window or a vinyl window or a fiberglass window. This is the only product.
So the interior, is it veneered or is it?
So the question was asked if the sample that I have, if that wood is veneered. That is just a sample where we do have a wood veneer on an interior product. The Barber's home, everything is white on the inside, so everything is going to be pre-painted in white on the composite product. So everything is designed to match.
I was asking, what does Fibrex actually look like? Because, let's see.
So this is Fibrex. If I'm able to.
My understanding is it's a composite.
Correct. Yep. So it is a composite. So if you're looking from the side, it's a wood fiber combined with polymers. And then the paint is baked right in. And in this scenario, we actually apply a wood veneer for interiors of homes for those homeowners that want to maintain that true wood look that can then be stained to match any interior color. So it's not like a shelf paper sticker that some window companies use when they're trying to show a wood interior.
And the exterior here
That is all Fibrex. It's just a screen. Yeah, the screens are part of,
I don't know if it's wood or it's not wood.
so this is, yeah, so it's a natural wood grill.
So I'm just
Yeah.
curious, was it a relationship to if you look at historic windows, okay, when SDLs were first introduced, they went to a 7/8 inch mutton, and then they would actually have a profile that looked like putty glazing, and then also that looked like the beading on the inside of the window. I wonder why you didn't decide to match the dimension on your muttons.
They do match. They are the same 7/8 size.
This is 7/8.
Yes. We also have a
Okay,
wide grill
sorry,
option.
it looks thinner, yeah.
Thanks. Yep. So I think we actually do have on one of, it didn't make it in the version that's on there, but we do have, if you go back to one of the earlier pages, I think it's page 3. Where we do have the cross-cut section, so that does show you what the full divided lights grills will look like. And you can see that we have it as 3/4 of an inch, or we also have 1 1/8. So we can do it in either size that a homeowner would need.
And on the casements in the existing house, what is the
They're all
mutton bar?
7/8.
They're all 7/8. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, so Susie, I guess for historic houses, and I'm not as familiar with windows, but wood is pretty much preferred just as a replacement always. But from a homeowner's perspective, I'm thinking they're probably way more expensive. Actually, I probably know this since we're doing some windows, we're restoring our windows, but they're more expensive and then there's more maintenance. Is that, just from a homeowner's perspective, I was just wondering, why go with Fibrex? That's the selling point, right?
That's
Cost, maintenance.
There's cost, there's maintenance. Andersen is a 120-year-old company. We are highly reputable. We
Sure.
actually do control the whole entire process for a homeowner. So not only do we manufacture all of the windows in Bayport, Minnesota, we use our own installers to install everything for the homeowner. So it is a simple one-stop shop for a high-quality product.
And then Susie, so the materials though, the concern is like the integrity of the historic home, right? The keeping with kind of the original
So in
type
the-
of materials that were used is,
I think the past thoughts, my concern is the material. The material doesn't mimic the wood. And I am concerned about the idea that if Fibrex windows are allowed on vintage homes, and if they're not, say, restricted to secondary facades or areas that are not visible, how does that then not allow them to be used everywhere since they are more cost effective? And then what is going to prompt someone to even choose to restore windows or use wood windows? So I realize that this home isn't a landmark home, so it's less stringent. I think that it just has been a precedent that has been very hard for the commission to reconcile in the past. And I do agree with Stuart's sentiment that, technologies become more, common and that people are used to them and we have to adapt to that, and they are very energy efficient, so that is a wonderful aspect. It's just something I think that we've struggled, and I don't think we've set a precedent on this scale in the past, is my understanding.
Thanks. And then I just wanted to echo also something, Stuart, you had said earlier about, since you are redoing windows, I feel like it is an opportunity to make them consistent rather than, I don't think the intention of this committee is just to duplicate what you have if what you have is maybe didn't make sense in the first place because it was just a replacement. So I do agree that you have an opportunity here to make the whole house more cohesive, and that I would encourage you to seize that.
Okay. And that we did try to do that in the one room. We were getting a lot of resistance over time trying to build the aspects of this project, and we're told you want to make sure that you're maintaining the identical architectural integrity that the current home has. So that's more of a situation for the Barbers. If that one room that just didn't have any muntins in it, we can always add them if that's something that would be, required by the committee.
Yeah, I think it's maintain the identical if that was kind of the historically accurate, that's, I think, the difference.
So I do have a question. What is it? I think it's the third floor where there's, the one side has the square with the square casement windows and the other that have the two casement windows side by side.
Yeah, that's on the third level up there where you can see the 3 single casement windows right there. And then the same room, that's where the double casement windows are, and I think the next page will actually show a much better view of those double casements.
So the double casement are the original design, right? Or is
Both
it?
of them.
Or both of them are, okay.
Yeah.
The window replacement on historic buildings is really a kind of dilemma. Pella Windows, who introduced the SDL with spacer bars to the American market, basically began making all wood window and then introduced a cladding on the exterior of the window, which was lightweight aluminum. They now do that entirely with an aluminum extrusion, so that only the window is now a composite window as well. The issue of the efficiency on the windows, even with a restored window, any manufacturer today's new window is tighter and emits less air than even a restored old window. And by the way, the heat loss, infiltration is worse than the heat loss on a single glazed window. Of course, you've got historic windows restored, but then generally they will either have a historic storm window, which, by the way, I think was only on casement windows. Correct me if I'm wrong. But by the time you take a landmark building, spend a lot of money to restore the windows, and then put triple track storm windows in the outside, you don't see the beauty or the scale of the Mutton subdivisions in the window at all. So, you know, for me, it's kind of a dilemma in terms of how one should approach the restoration of historic buildings in terms of windows.
Are there any other questions?
Yes. So I wanted to ask about the proportions of some of the panes of glass, because I think that's leading to some of the disharmony that we're seeing in the existing home, as well as maybe where we're going to end up. So the photo that we have up right now, actually, the windows that are on the lower level that you're not replacing, do we know what the story is when those were put in? Because they have a horizontal orientation that I'm not seeing in any of the other existing windows.
On window type C,
It's below type C. I know you're not replacing those, but do we know the history? Are those recently replaced?
No, I don't think so.
And do we know if those are true divided light? Are they insulated? Does that, it almost looks like a snap-in grill actually from here.
I don't think they're insulated.
those are still the original windows.
Yeah, they're original.
Those are the original, okay.
Everything in that home is still.
Okay. Then I would like to go kind of on a case-by-case basis, starting with type A. And I think some of your, the proportions on the drawings might be a little bit off, but we'll go with the dimensions. And are those to the middle of the muttons, or is that to the edge of the glass? Like, for example, the 8.5? That,
To the edge of the muttons.
Okay.
It's glass.
okay,
Yes.
thank you. And so when we go from A existing to A new, we ended up with a slightly horizontal proportion on that glass. And if you're replacing in kind, how did that happen?
It's because we're doing it as an insert window, so once again, we're keeping the original framing of the unit, we're putting our window inside the frame.
But on,
That's wh- So our frames are a little bit thicker than the wood frames. That's why the glass is shrinking.
okay, and since you have, you're shrinking it more in the horizontal direction, I mean, in the horizontal bars are taking up more space than the vertical ones?
Correct.
Okay. That one's pretty close to square, so let's look at the rest of them. Type B, original was pretty vertical. The new is also vertical, okay. Type C, those are square up above, and the new ones are also square? Okay.
Correct.
Type D, the originals are horizontal. Where were those located on the house?
That was that second story room that we were just looking at.
Okay, I think you,
Up at the top, third.
okay, so those have those have that horizontality in them already. All right, I'm looking for some consistency here to try to get them like all square or near square, or it was a little bit vertical, and it looks like it's kind of an impossible task on this house. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, why don't you take a seat, and then we'll ask for any public comment, if anyone would like to make, and Cade? Okay. Okay, if commissioners want to discuss. Is there any discussion, or have all your questions been answered? If not, then I think I've been pretty clear about my concern with the precedent, but it sounds like most commissioners find this to be acceptable, which is no issue. I think that, again, time is on the side of these new technologies, that people start to get used to them. So if there are no discussion items, if someone wants to make a motion, then we can do that.
Can I just ask a procedural question, I guess? If they do decide that they would like to make some changes to the plan, inspired by Stuart's comment, what is the process? Because then, could that be minor, or?
I mean, I think it's helpful that we had some deliberation about that here, and it seems like there's some comfortability with that. It's certainly something that I would reach back out, at least to the officers of the commission, and ask about those changes. Or similar, some cases where we've created like a small subcommittee of commissioners to review.
So it wouldn't trigger them having to come back to us?
Not necessarily, yeah.
Was everyone,
'Cause I think we've had a case before where there were like 3 commissioners that there was one thing that they wanted to really take a close look at, and they came back. It was kind of like a staff review with a small group.
was everyone comfortable with that notion? that they
So
could-
are we referring to Stuart's comment about doing a major overhaul to all of the windows, not just the ones that need to be replaced?
That was not how I understood your comment.
Yeah, I don't think that was what I was suggesting, but there are clearly some, for instance, the question of, divided light versus later windows that were replaced with single panes. So, basically, we're empowered to grant certificates of appropriateness, which has to do with the appearance primarily of the window. So if we're all convinced that the composite material in this window is acceptable in a historic house, not a landmark, but a historic house, then the question would be, could what we're looking at be improved by perhaps dividing some of the windows, perhaps replacing some of the later double-hung windows with single casement windows that were divided. So it's really kind of a aesthetic judgment of the thing.
Yeah, that's how I understood your comment too. It sounds like they believed that they had to do it this way. But if we're suggesting to them that they don't necessarily have to replicate every single window, if they wanted to add a little bit extra to some of the ones that do not have the buttons, that they could do that, but that would have to be reviewed on minor work. Is that what you're saying, Kate?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. I know you didn't introduce yourself as a design professional, but I know that Andersen is the largest window manufacturer in this country, and I'm wondering if, as part of the service that you have, there's somebody that could take a look at on staff that could take a look at some of these issues.
There possibly is. We do have some project managers that have some architectural background, and once again, we were trying to follow suit with what was currently there.
Totally understood.
Mr. Barber is open to possibly adding muntins to the windows that are on that third level, but otherwise we're pretty much following suit with what's there.
I mean, if they're happy with that, then, and that's what they brought here, I think we just vote on that. But I wondered from a procedural matter, if they were inspired to do something else, how they would do that after we vote for what they've proposed. So I think you've answered my question, Kate.
Well, can we empower staff to do that as a independent review that doesn't have to come before the board? So if to sort of paraphrase where I think we're headed is that we're thinking we're going to offer approve a certificate of appropriateness, but that we are in fact kind of lukewarm with the end results here, and that we would encourage them to look at the building more holistically in terms of more consistency with window types and mutton patterns, et cetera, and that we empower staff to do that review.
Okay. The only thing I would add to that, to clarify it, is that clearly if you replace everything in kind, the building's going to continue looking pretty much the way it looks right now. What we're offering optionally is an opportunity for you to try and make it look better, I guess.
Right, and if I might add, it just sounds like we're talking about the whole window program as a whole and what's appropriate for the whole building, and considering while what you've presented, it sounds like it's kind of on the way to approval, but maybe a whole cohesive program would be even better.
Someone.
Paul,
Can,
why don't you come to the microphone, please?
you're gonna have to, and you're gonna have to introduce yourself, Paul. Sorry.
I am Paul Janicki. I was curious if you offered a putty glaze profile on the exterior of those, and what is the glazing on the existing windows now? Is it putty glazed or is it an ovalo? It's putty glazed, so you're not be able to replicate the putty glazing, basically. Okay, that's what I was curious about.
Okay, our commissioners, is anyone ready to make a motion?
I should probably add one more thing. I think by suggesting, rather than demanding, but suggesting that some of the windows that currently aren't divided light be done as divided light, we're also asking the homeowner to incur not a lot, but slightly more expense. So everybody should be aware of that. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay.
I'm just.
I was,
Go ahead.
I was under the impression we were just letting them know that they could do that, that they're, to correct the misimpression that they had to replicate everything that was there. That is a very common thing that people think about preservation, that we're insisting that it's has to be what it currently is.
Correct, and I
So we're not
think,
suggesting it. I thought we weren't suggesting it. We were just letting them know it was an option.
yes, I would say you're letting them know it's an option. It might even be something that you recommend, but that you should react to what they're proposing and what's before you. So I think that's what the motion should be. And then if they decide to take some of that additional testimony and move forward with something different, I think that we've also provided enough testimony that would allow staff to work with them and make those judgments.
I just had a quick, since this is one of the, one of the largest scale approvals of this new material, are we essentially saying, moving forward, if a homeowner came back, that we would approve this material window on the front facade as well, or would we have that conversation at a later date?
I would say you just have that at a later date. That's not what's before
Yeah,
you
right.
right now, so I don't think we need to worry about it. But I think it's also what Susie said in providing that testimony, that you don't want to necessarily create a precedent. Certainly the primary front facade has, more of an impact on how it relates with the rest of the resources on that block, and you might want to treat them more sensitively, and I think that might be one of the reasons that you didn't propose replacement on that front elevation, so.
Okay. I know this could go on forever. I apologize, but just to put this in a bit of context, historically, we have not approved vinyl windows, and that's because to date, vinyl, because it is not as structurally sound as some of the other things, even the composites that windows are being made of, the profiles and the frame of the window, whether it's a casement or a double hung, is actually thicker. So the vinyl windows, just to me at least, are not yet acceptable substitutions for for a variety of wood or wood composite windows.
Would a commissioner like to make a motion? Please.
Sure.
Thank you.
And may I add a recommendation at the end of it? Sure. Okay. Okay, so regarding 1713 Asbury Avenue, Ridge Historic District, case 23 Pres-0001, I move that we issue a certificate of appropriateness to replace selected wood windows, double hung casement and fixed from the side north, the south, and the rear east facades. Replacement windows are renewal by Andersen Fibrex windows to closely match the size, style, and configuration of the windows to be replaced. Applicable standards, alteration 1 through 10. And we will further add a recommendation that the home be looked at on a holistic basis in terms of finding a little more consistency and harmony between all of the windows, meaning you don't necessarily have to replace an existing one with the exact same one in kind, and we further empower the staff to make that review.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And I would like to cite standard 6 for my opposition. Okay. Thank you very much. The motion passed 6-1. And let's move on. Kate, if you could read the next case into record, please.
1720 Wesley Avenue in the Ridge Historic District, case number 22 PRES 0239. Paul Janicki, applicant and architect, requests a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a single-story addition and attached garage and construct a new two-story addition at the home's south volume. Applicable standards, demolition 1 through 5, alteration 1 through 10, and construction 1 through 15.
You gotta switch the. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Janicki with Paul Janicki Architects, and this is 1720, what's the amount? On 1720 Wesley. So this is a Queen Anne-ish structure built in 1894. Maybe if you could scroll a little bit. Thanks, Kate. Maybe go back and just go back to the original photograph. Thanks. Yeah, one more up. Oh, yeah, you can see there was an addition that was put on the south side that was like a garage underneath, and then a like a family room on top with a flat roof. That was built in like the 60s, I believe. There was another addition on the back of the house, if you want to go a little more. Thank you so much. On the left side there, that is was built in like 2002, not by the current owner, but there you have it. If you keep going a little more, Cade. So we have this addition already on the south side, and we're sort of mimicking the footprint of this addition. Maybe one more slide. Thanks. You can see that it's shaded on the bottom. The porch is to the west of it, and what we're doing is we want to add basically a sort of this very similar footprint to the south side of the house that would be a two-story addition, and would encompass a mudroom on the first floor and a family room, a staircase that would go down to the basement underneath the addition for storage. And if you want to scroll through the plans, I can maybe walk you through them real fast. So yeah, basement, proposed basement with storage area, with stair going down. The new, yeah, that's the existing, yeah, the proposed family room is to the southeast there, and then you can see the new staircase. There's a new entrance on the south side that has a canopy that is accessible from both Wesley and from the alley. The porch is the same footprint. It's actually been truncated and because the mudroom and stairs have taken some of that territory. And then instead of an inboard stair, we put the stair on the outside of the house so we can more control the aesthetics of that and also get more footprint for the screen porch. Okay, next slide, thanks. This is the existing second floor. You can see there's some, like 3 bedrooms and a little study. And they have a big family, and they're trying to get more bedrooms. And so the addition has 2 bedrooms on the inside of the house, where there was a bedroom leading into those 2 new bedrooms. We've created a new bathroom that's actually sort of big enough for kids to use. The other one that exists is pretty tight and almost not usable. We also were able to create a laundry room that was enclosed and make some different closet spaces for some of the other bedrooms that made more sense. You can keep going, Kate, thank you. Room plan before, roof plan after, pretty simple, except now it's a 2-story addition and not flat roofs. And then if you keep going, Kate, oh boy, those are dark, yeah. Well, anyway, oh, thanks, perfecto. So the existing addition on the left, of course, is going away. That has the garage door, and it's aluminum windows and aluminum siding, and the 2-story addition, as you see now, to the south. All the materials will be matched. All the trim shapes will be matched. The brick base will be matched with recycled brick. The roof will basically remain an asphalt shingle roof. We're not looking to do anything different with that material. All the windows are wood simulated divide light Marvins. For paint, you can keep going, Cade, thank you. The south elevation, you'll see that the new south elevation basically mimics what is there already, which is sort of extruding it, if you will. The window opening placements are slightly different, but more or less the same, because there is no first-story windows anymore. So we just sort of imagine where they should be, and that's for the family room and for the new entry that you can see there with the canopy. It has brackets that match the front porch brackets. It's wood door with glass lights. You can see the truncated porch to the left of it and the new stair that's beyond it. All the materials, again, will match the existing clapboard and mitered corners and wood windows and wood shakes. Down the west elevation, you can see before the addition, after the addition. You can also see sort of through the porch, we've shown a new door that comes off of the inside of the porch and some windows that add light into that new stairwell. The windows that you see above, the pair of double hungs, are into the new west bedroom. The addition you see on the west does not change. And here are just some kind of real rudimentary massing diagrams, just because we wanted to be able to give you an idea of how the addition folds back away from the main principal facade. And if you keep going, Cade, you'll see on the back how the porch more or less stays the same, but like I said, gets truncated, and then the stair occurs on the outside leading west. And there's like a little Photoshop thing of what it might look like.
Thank you, Paul.
Sure.
Are there any questions?
Only wood windows for Mr. Janicki.
You know all too well.
I have a question about, I think it's on page 100. The drawing shows the cornice in the existing and proposed. Is that cornice
Oh, could you
being,
maybe
being
go to the
added?
drawing and make sure we
is it
get
being added, or is it already existing?
this page here?
Yes.
And where exactly are you pointing to? On the gable end?
Yes.
Yeah, the gable end, yeah, basically what you're seeing on the left elevation is what is there now. And as we extrude the new addition away from it south, we are more or less recreating all the trim and the dentals and the placement of the windows and the clerestory, attic window. Yeah, all that trim, if that's what you're asking, all identical. I don't think we'll take it off and reuse it, but if they can do it, sure.
Any other questions? Beth?
Yeah, hi. I- I- do you have any information and I guess my question is about the new dimensions of the house now. You know, originally it would have been more height than width, and now we're having more width than height. And how does that sit or fit along the streetscape on this block? You know, the other Victorians or, you
Well,
know, is
it's-
this,
yeah,
is
this-
this a unique
this-
change or?
This house is pretty narrow compared to the other Victorians on the street. They typically have a three-bay or a tripartite sort of arrangement, and this is the one house seems that it doesn't. But there's not that, there are farmhouses, and we call them, the kind of veer between Queen Anne and farmhouse, that weird netherworld, but that would be more narrow like this, you're right, yeah. But there are other houses on the street, actually more houses on the street that are wider than narrow, I guess is what I'm saying. Or three-bay than two-bay.
I was just going to make a comment. I live right near here, and I've walked past this house many times, but I really like what you've done. I think it's much more sympathetic to the house than what's there today.
I think so.
A lot. So I mean, obviously it's a change, but that, to your point, that block has a lot of interesting homes. Some of them are big, some are small, but I don't think it will have an adverse impact on like the block per se. I think I think you did a nice job with the addition overall.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean, as long as we're saying things like that, at first it would seem that you and Gary Shoemaker are rebuilding a lot of Evanston, and it would seem that that's a good thing. I concur. This is a very nicely done addition to the house, and I would make a motion to grant a certificate of appropriateness to 1720 Wesley Avenue in the Ridge Historic District, 22 Pres 0239, which would grant a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a single-story addition, an attached garage, and construct a new two-story addition at the home south volume. Applicable standards: demolition 1 through 5, alteration 1 through 10, and construction 1 through 15.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, but we have not had any discussion about this yet.
God, I'm sorry.
We can discuss the motion on the floor.
Discussion.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, I
We
think
can
we can.
properly, can we second it and then have a discussion?
Yes,
or-
yes, you
So I'll
can.
second so we can have a discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carl.
If you'd like to take a seat.
Okay,
I
sure.
apologize.
Would commissioners like to discuss?
I would. Thank you. First of all, I am a little concerned about the non-contributing designation. I understand why it is here, why it is under dispute. However, my question is whether we have purview over a building that is designated as non-contributing.
Yeah, so technically, our standards for review don't distinguish between contributing and non-contributing. The way that you could make and draw those determinations are some of the language in the standards that talk about distinguished architectural features, character-defining features, where you could say that those don't apply for a non-contributing structure if it did not contain any of those, for example. But just on face value, the ordinance does not draw a distinction between those.
All right, thank you. So that was my first question. For alteration number, to read my own writing, 2 and 3, the distinguishing original qualities or character of a property, structure, site, or object and its environment shall not be destroyed. I'm wondering about the asymmetry of this as a distinguishing characteristic of it. You know, as we noted a few minutes ago, actually the block is full of houses that are quite more wide than they are tall. However, this is an unusual structure, so it makes it distinctive. And so I am wondering how we feel about the fact that we are actually going to undermine that part of what makes it distinctive. So it's the asymmetry and also the verticality, both of those distinctive qualities get undermined by this addition. The other one under alteration, number 3, that property, structures, sites, and objects shall be recognized as products of their own time. So we just were talking a few minutes ago, right, about not necessarily sort of requiring that everything be absolutely matched. And so the issue that I'm having with this is that it's too seamless. There is a kind of, when you look at it, the roof line continues across, everything is perfectly matched. If you didn't know, you would think it was built this way, and there is a kind of suggestion that of a kind of faux or fake genealogy here. So if there was some way, I would like to see some changes and some minor changes to this to suggest that this is an addition and to reduce a little bit of that horizontal symmetry. I think not that I think that this is awful, but it's just, I think it's just on the other side of not following the standards, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So,
I'd love to comment on that because I think it's a philosophical discussion and it's a point of view that has changed over time. The original Secretary of the Interior standards, which were adopted in 1976, were for historic buildings, landmark buildings. And they suggested that there should be a clear distinction between the addition and the existing structure. They also humorously, in retrospect, suggested that the addition should be built in a way that it could be removed so the building could be restored. Never going to happen given construction prices. But I think the idea of asking that the addition be distinguishable had to do with the whole idea that the addition would somehow be subservient to and would allow the historic building to remain dominant in the pairing. And I think that that's for me at least at this point in time, that is a case-by-case kind of judgment that I would want to make, because to me at least, in an interpretive sense at this point, to make an addition which is so distinctly different from the thing that it's added onto, that it is in fact forcing the thing it's added onto to become kind of background to it, suggests that the kitchen addition or the bathroom addition or the bedroom addition is somehow actually intrinsically more important than the building it's being added onto. So the question of whether or not making a seamless addition is a good thing or a bad thing, I think is open to discussion. And, you know, I've said my piece about it. Paul, maybe you want to say something. Maybe the other commissioners have opinions about how that number 3, which is clearly a carryover from the Secretary of the Interior standards, should be dealt with.
Stuart, you were kind of taking the words out of my mouth about the Secretary's standards and how it has evolved over time. I worked on houses by Howard Van Doren Shaw, Mayo, and there were instances where Mayo would come back and a new family would live there and they would want a bigger kitchen or they want some different quarters for something, and they would not do a mid-century modern thing glomped onto this wonderful creation. They would make more of the wonderful creation. And so you're right, it's a philosophical question. And you and I probably fall on one side of that line, and I don't deny it, but that's just kind of the way we like to see architecture. So that's the way, I guess we feel that when we come to like an important building, like a Shaw building, the last thing I want to do is put a Paul Janicki addition on a Shaw building. I want people to think, oh, that is in the spirit of Shaw. There are those details that Shaw used, and the colors and the stucco pattern, and to me that's important. So yeah, you're right. It's kind of a gray area. I get that.
So may I mean, if I am going to weigh in, I think that if it was a seamless addition, the addition would have been on the same plane as, as the main house, but because it's set back, I do think of that as more of a kind of an addition, and it's not trying to appear as the whole, the front facade is like one plane. Because it's set back, I do see that as kind of it reads as an addition. I mean, it's hard on a line drawing because it all looks flat, but I think in the 3D model, I think you do get a sense that
So just so that it's clear what I was talking about, I never thought that it was straight across the front of the building. It carries the same. It carries it is an addition on one side that is almost identical to the addition to the other side.
Well, I think
So
you
it
need to
makes
look
it-
at that addition. You need to look at the original architecture. The original roof kind of comes all the way out beyond the front facade onto columns that form a porch, and then it's also a slooping roof, which is kind of curving and kind of coming out in a bell shape. And then there's a dormer on that is also conforms to that sort of swoopy shape. I mean, it's extraordinarily, to me, it's extraordinarily different thematically from the addition. And then the addition, in my mind at least, was trying to be as subservient as possible to that more robust architecture, the original architecture. We weren't trying to upstage, if you will, the original architecture.
In any case, it continues the same roof line across, and it is the exact same height, and it has all the same in your drawings and in your presentation.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same height, though. The height of the porch is A, the height of the middle piece is B, and ours is C. There's 3 different heights. Can you see?
It continues the same roof line all the way across, does it not?
That's the only thing, yeah, the roof line. Right.
What? I'm sorry?
That's right, the ridge does continue across.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It continues the same ridge line all the way across. And
But
so
but the 3 elevations are clearly tripartite.
Yeah,
A, B, and
yeah,
C.
no, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Continuing the
I didn't
roof
say anything.
is actually an
Pardon me.
element of
I didn't-
integration.
Excuse me. I didn't say anything about the elevations. I was talking about the roof line, right? And so what I was saying is that it is causing the front of the building, the whole building, to look like it is more horizontal than it is vertical. I'm not the only person that has noted that, and it is very. It is so seamless that it makes it seem as though that it has always been that way. And so the question for the commission is whether that's all right with everybody.
I've always thought it was an ideal condition to try to achieve. Unless, of course, the addition you're making is bigger than the original and programmatically more important, and then you do something different. In my opinion.
So like Commissioner Ziem, I live right next to this, and I've walked by this house maybe hundreds of times. And I'm very familiar with that street and that site, and I do not take issue with the proposed solution. I think that this specific case with this solution, whereas I do understand your concerns, I think my knowledge of this specific house, just from walking by and living in that neighborhood, only a few houses away, I think it is an appropriate solution for this case. I'm not saying it would be appropriate for every case, and I think we've had that issue. But that would be my opinion, is that for this specific home, it is a very it's a smaller home in comparison to the other homes. I do think I would find it to meet the standards.
I should say that I spent a fair amount of time walking around in front of this house today, and I thought that if we're okay with allowing an addition to a home that is so seamless that you can't tell the difference between the original and the new one, then it would, I agree, actually, it would fit in the neighborhood in terms of its proportions. It's just, this addition is changing the proportions that make this house distinctive, so we just have to decide if we're going to be okay with that.
Well, I think that also can be represented in a motion. I think that's, so, I mean, we can continue to discuss it, of course.
Right, that's what, I was just offering it up as a discussion point.
And if there are other commissioners that'd like to comment, I would also like, since we kind of went out of order on this case, I would like Cade to read the public comment into record, please.
Yeah, I did receive multiple, maybe 4 or 5 pieces of public comment pretty late in the day, so I'd like to read those into the record as those members aren't here. The first is from Maggie Kong Hewen at 1715 Wesley Avenue. She said she's reaching out to share her support for the proposed project at 1720 Wesley. It's located across the street from her residence. I have another from Jenny Colton at 1721 Wesley. They write in support of the proposed changes to 1720 Wesley Avenue. The current addition to the house was added in the 1980s, several owners ago, and was clearly not in keeping with the historical design of the rest of the home. Rather, it was added on with a somewhat haphazard appearance and detracts from the rest of the exterior. The proposed addition appears to honor the architectural themes of the home while updating its functionality for more modern era and family. Indeed, in seeking to change the existing appearance of the home, the owners are returning it to something that is more architecturally consistent and much more visually appealing for the rest of the block. And the next is from Olivier at 1715 Wesley as well. They approve of the addition and the project at 1720 Wesley. And the last public comment is from Craig Baxa, which I believe I printed out for you, but I'll just read it since it's in front of me. I had a chance to review the plans for renovation at 1720 Wesley Avenue. I approve of the plans and feel this would be a nice enhancement to the neighborhood. I also believe the renovation will be an important feature for the existing home. And Craig lives at 1736 Wesley Avenue.
And then we have the printout from Michelle and Brad Allen as well from 1740, if you didn't read that, sorry. Okay, so now we can continue to discuss if commissioners would like to discuss further. Are there any other comments or?
Sure. I mean, just quickly, I appreciate the comments about the verticality, and it's the kind of thing that, as a practicing architect, it's not always my perspective honoring what's there. I'm kind of looking for more harmony in the end product. So thank you for bringing that up. And I think I agree with probably Lee Stewart and some of the other commissioners that it's sort of a case-by-case philosophical discussion, and in this particular case, I feel, as the others do, that that particular element of this house, I'm okay with that sort of being lost in this larger, more horizontal, but very harmonious solution.
Yeah, I would add that I agree it's a case-by-case thing. I think because of the change in proportions is still in context with the surrounding homes, I'm comfortable with that. But if it was different on a different street, it would probably be different. So.
I should add that I did say this a few minutes ago, that for me, it would just be a few minor changes and it would be fine. But anyway, I do think that this house is special and different on the block, and this addition, I think what they're removing definitely deserves to be removed. So it's not a problem. Adding an addition is not the issue. The issue is just that the way in which they're doing this is making this house, which is distinctive on this block, less distinctive on this block.
I just was curious. I know we're not supposed to redesign anything, but you said you just talked about minor changes. I was just curious what, for you, that would look like.
For me, the main thing is the continuation of the ridge line. If it were a little lower, if maybe that roof had a slightly different pitch, or even was coming at it in a different direction, something like that that made it, a little different. The windows seem fine. The little dormer, I guess, is okay. They probably need that up there. But the fact that this addition is equal to the other side of the house from the perspective of the verticality versus the width, we do have a standard actually about proportions. Construction number, is it?
Proportions of facades is 2.
Yes, construction number 2. I have in my notes 1, 2, and 12, actually, but I didn't get to those. So anyway, we do have that standard as well.
So I think on, what is this? Page A11 shows, if you look at the proposed south elevation, or look at the elevation, there is a slight change in the ridge. Am I reading that correctly? That there is kind of a height difference in the.
It's back to front.
That's the side.
Right, but if you were saying, on the side, like if you would like something like that for the addition.
Oh, you mean to take some
The height of the
minor
ridge down there.
I mean, maybe a little bit more distinctive than that, because when you're standing on the sidewalk looking up, that would be not as noticeable. But that was sort of the idea, is to just make it slightly subservient to the main house. Nothing major, not taking it back down to a one-story thing, just kind of acknowledging that the house has this kind of special personality on the block. But I'm only one person, so if you guys love it and are ready to.
Okay. Just so we're clear, standards for review of construction, there are two things that deal with proportions. One is proportion of openings, the other one proportion of facades. And it says the relationship of width to the height of the facade should be visually compatible.
I think it's a complicated issue, just
Yeah,
because a
I
lot of
think it's
times
visually
we ask applicants
Yeah.
to match slopes. On rear additions, we've actually gone to lengths to saying when you have your projecting rear addition into your rear yard, we don't like it when they change the slope slightly, and then we say, why isn't that matching? So I think it's a weird, it's a complicated discussion item, right? Because in some cases, you want that to be compatible. Other cases, like you're saying, you want it to be different. And I think it starts to bleed into the realm of a design. So again, like Commissioner Dreiler said, like, I think it comes down to whether we think it meets the standards on this case or not.
Yeah, I specifically tried not to. I only offered some thoughts when I was prompted to do that. I tried not to actually say that. So, because I don't want to get into design. I'm just noting that that we're going to let them do something to this property, which we have advocated against having people do in other instances.
We have, but we've actually fought for it on rear additions, where we've had taken issues with rear additions that aren't compatible with the home, that have a different, rhythm. So I think it's. We could discuss this all night too.
Yeah.
So
I mean, clearly it's a case-by-case basis, but following your line of argument, would you have approved the 1980 addition? Yeah, the garage thingy that was added on the
don't think
side that's
anyone
being
would
taken
approve
off?
that.
I mean, does it?
I don't understand.
I don't think
does
it's
it
fair to
meet the
ask.
requirements?
I actually do not understand why you're asking me that, because what I am saying about this is completely unrelated to that,
I mean, this
that you
is-
are saying. So
I
that's-
think
that's a misunderstanding of what I'm
Beth,
saying.
do you want to
Yeah, I just
comment?
have, and I think for me, the construction standard 11 is where, I'm still, I still have issue with, because it does talk about the directional expression of the facade. And if you keep reading to the end, it's whether this be vertical character, horizontal character, or non-directional character. And that's where I think that the change that's happening, and then I think that's where that's sticking for me.
And I think that this comes down to whether commissioners feel that it's visually compatible for this case specific. So with that said, I would like to ask if we've already made a motion and seconded it.
There is a motion on the floor to approve as presented by Commissioner Cohen, seconded by Commissioner Klein.
So if it's acceptable to all commissioners, I would like to take a vote. And if you decide to oppose, then if you could please just state your standards for opposition, that would be great. So in that case, all in favor? And all opposed?
Aye.
So Commissioner Dreller and Commissioner Bodin. And then if you guys could maybe just make a statement for the record, what standards?
Sure. So this is Commissioner Dreller, alteration 2 and 3, and construction 2 and 11.
And for myself, Commissioner Bodan, it was construction standard number 11, and then alteration standard number 9.
Thank you. So with that, the motion passes 5-2. Thank you, Paul. And with that, Kate, if we could read the next case into record, please.
1940 Orrington Avenue in the Northeast Historic District, case number 22 PRES 0240. Jeannie Petrick, applicant and architect, requests a certificate of appropriateness to construct 2 dormer additions above the home's full second story, including a gable dormer at the front east volume and a shed dormer at the side north volume, as well as alteration to the structure's west rear volume roof form. Applicable standards, alteration 1 through 10, and construction 1 through 4, 7, 8, and 10 through 15.
Thank you. And if you could just introduce yourself, of course.
Hold on just a minute, sorry. Hi, I'm Jeannie Petrick with Petrick Architecture. I'm here representing my clients at 1940 Orrington Avenue. We're looking to do a third floor remodel. It's an existing space with no heating and no cooling, no windows, just some skylights. They've been using this for their office space for the last few years and hangout area for their kids. And so we want to, right now also there's a half bath up there. And so the goal was really to get headroom, sunlight, and a full bathroom so it could almost act as, extra living space, whether it's a bedroom and a hangout area or like a master suite, etc. And yeah, with the challenges that we've had, it's a hip roof with a fairly low slope. And to get this to work, some of what we propose is on the back, it suggests so that we wouldn't lose the impact of the front elevation, that we were going to extend the roof line towards the back, so it'd be more of a gable on the back side, and that way we could get the headroom on the inside for the bedroom area. And then to get a headroom, we also added on the north side a shed dormer on the back. Oh, sorry, can I point with this, or how does that?
Yeah, you should be able to. I think it's maybe up on it.
This guy? Okay.
Green, unfortunately, so it shows up very light if it works.
Lord, I can't see it. Can you guys see it?
We're talking about this there.
Yeah, if you can, Kate, if you don't mind moving around. Yeah, so the dormer on the north side, or the north, yeah. So that's on the north elevation and it's extending to the rear, not to the front. So once again, we are trying to hold on to the existing front elevation, maintaining the proportions and existing conditions. We did want to add a dormer to the front to gain some natural sunlight into that front space. And there is the house directly north of this is a very similar house. It almost looks identical, to tell you the truth, but with some changes as they evolved through the 100 years. And it has a dormer on front in similar proportion. So the goal really was to be able to see out the back, see out the front, and with respect to the existing proportions. All the existing skylights, we would be replacing them. They're just very old and need updating. We will be, I don't know, it's very hard to see from pedestrian view, so I don't even know if you noticed it, but there's I don't even know what the appropriate term is for it, but it's a skylight, like a sky well, that is existing that would be removed. It's kind of where that shed dormer is on the northwest side of the property. So this perspective is kind of showing you as you'd be walking down the street what you would see massing wise. And I was also thinking appropriately that, you know, with respect to the main dominant house, you know, these dormers are really not in plain view of the house, from a pedestrian view, and would respect the existing structure. All the materials we're going to use would be all wood to match and respect like the siding scale, material and finishes would all be in respect to the existing residence.
I'm sorry, did you mention what type of windows you were planning to use?
All wood.
Okay, thank you.
Marvin.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Go ahead, John.
I think this image answers my question, but the frieze board, the tall band of trim under the eave, that does exist around the backside, correct? Because it doesn't pick up on your rear elevation, your 2D elevation.
Oh, you know what? It's interesting. I had someone do this rendering and I just realized it shouldn't be there on the rendering. It's not there on the existing house. And I wasn't proposing it in the
So
work.
it exists on the long sides and then sort of ends when you get to the rear?
Yeah, you know what? And then also, here's the existing photos. Kate, I sent them to him delayed. I do have them. Do you have them? Are they on the? Because you can see this detail where it stops. It kind of stops about a third on the south
I
and
see.
north
I see.
elevations. You can kind of
Okay.
see it stopped. Well, yeah, so you can't see it on the back, but if you go to the side photo,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
there,
there.
you can see where it stops. You know,
So
that's what happened.
what I liked about if it did in fact run around the four sides was that it really
It would've
made the
liked
little
that.
hip part of the roof important before you got to the low slope gable, actually, because you would have run into a very complicated trim scenario if you had a straight gable on the rear and that frieze board was running across there. Since it doesn't, I still like that you interrupted that gable with that little section of hip, because the proportion of the gable isn't really kind of keeping with the era of the house. It looks good in a hip. It doesn't look so great in a gable.
And with that also in mind was that, you know, the existing roof structure is continuous so that we're not, you know, it's kind of clear what's new and what's old.
Okay,
That
thank
was
you.
originally there.
Just one other question. So it's a hip roof now, and we're adding a gable with a little modification on the rear. We're adding a shed dormer. I don't mind those on a house that's not a landmark itself. The front gable, dormer, we're adding another little gable. I guess I'm going to suggest to the fellow commissioners, but I'm curious, would you or your client object to that being a hip form and not a gable on the front?
I had gone back and forth on this. I mean, with the goal being about headroom, I prefer it to be a gable. And it was funny, I should have documented the ones I've driven around because I kept on thinking, does it need to be a hip? But I did actually see a lot in Evanston with a hipped and the combo of the gable dormer.
Not uncommon, for sure.
Yeah.
And you need the sloped cathedral part of that to get better headroom in that.
Yeah,
in
and we are tight on the code for the 7-foot high ceiling height
Okay,
percentage.
okay, thank you.
I had a question about the front gable as well. The elevation drawing shows a triangular window in the gable, and the rendering doesn't seem to show it.
It's not to be a window. Maybe that's not clear enough in my drawings. I always envisioned it would just be the 3 windows, and then the top, it just wouldn't be siding, it would be white trim.
So the rendering is correct.
The rendering's correct.
Yeah, I think the rendering makes a convincing argument for it, both as a gable and also, it's big, but it seems, based on that rendering, not to be out of scale with the house. So I think the image is convincing.
And both adjacent properties, one to the south and then one to the north, both have similar dormers. So this is uniquely the one house that doesn't have any dormers. So.
Any other questions? All right, why don't we have you take a seat? Kate, was there any public comment for this case? Okay. Discussion with.
I was just gonna say, I'm not, I guess I was looking at the standard 12, I think it's a construction. I just don't, I don't, the symmetry for me with the shed dormer on the side, I know there's something there existing right now, it's just not as big, and I just don't love, this is such a symmetrical looking house, and then throwing that on the one side, I just think it sort of fails the standard in that regard.
Are there any comments to that by other commissioners?
Which standard? I'm sorry.
I just noted standard 12 of the construction, which is original qualities for additions to existing structures. The distinguishing original qualities or character of the property, structure, or object in its environment should be preserved. And I was thinking the symmetry, that's what should be preserved. And it just throws it off to me. The gable in front, that's still symmetrical, gives some headroom. I don't know. That to me doesn't meet that standard.
I feel like if that was being presented on the front elevation or even the rear, that would be probably a lot more objectionable, at least for me, on a side elevation. Not uncommon to see that kind of symmetry break down and have maybe a shed dormer, just off to one side. So that's how I read it.
I'm not sure how much you can see of it from the street. Maybe if you were across the street, you'd be able to see it, but it's up so high and towards the back of the house.
From the side, you can see it right there. As you're...
Yeah, a little bit.
That's where you'd be, walking the street. Oops.
I don't think that this disrupts the symmetry of the house nearly as much as the previous project disrupted the asymmetry of that house, if we're going to talk about that. I had a question about, for my fellow commissioners, about the windows and the rhythm of solid and void, and how the gable here in the front, rather the dormer in the front and the gable in the back, are kind of really full of windows. Like it's from, the entire area is all fenestration. And I am wondering if, how we feel about that.
You mean that center gable? Was that
The,
this
the,
dormer? Sorry.
the gable in the back is really jammed with, here, with windows. It's almost a Palladian type of, like, just filling in as much as possible with windows, and I can appreciate that they need light up there. But there's no, so I'm not sure if that's quite visually compatible with the rest. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but, and then the front dormer, where we just were, that other photo, yeah, is just, it's almost continuously glazed all the way across, effectively. So do we feel that that is visually compatible? I am on the fence about that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying too, especially on the front. It's a lot of window.
Solid and void, I guess I'm referencing our standards here. That would be construction number 4.
I mean, I do understand what you're saying, and the floor plan, it says that the casement window is supposed to meet for egress purposes, so I mean, I guess it has to be tall enough for a person to, to exit.
In the back?
Oh, it's the width? Not the, okay, it's the width.
The middle one in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the grouping of the 3.
It's a lot of fenestration in those small areas, and I'm wondering.
Do you want to respond to her questions?
Yeah, can I just add something about the windows fenestration? So the back, there are the Palladian-style windows up and down the street that are similar in style. And that is kind of what also we were trying to gain. The goal was to get as much sunlight and also meet the egress codes. And how do we do that respectfully to the neighborhood and stuff? And so this is where we landed with the back. And then those aren't shown, but they are double hung, by the way. I think it's just the rendering doesn't show it as double hung. And then in the front, the windows, typically like a small dormer, even in a, traditionally a dormer would maximize, it's there for sunlight. So I'm maximizing the amount of light that we can bring in. And a lot of smaller dormers, you would see that a window would almost go to the outside edges. And it's secondary to the house. So I didn't consider the dormers necessarily want to have the same massing and open and lightness as the main house, if that makes sense. To me, the dormers are secondary because they're up on the roof.
Yeah,
And so they're supposed to be lighter and visually, and like I said, it also provides the light that we need and we want.
Yeah, the back is the rear of the facade. It's not a landmark, right? It's just a part of just contributing. So if we feel comfortable with that, I guess it's fine. It helps them. But the front is the front of the house.
I mean, in the rendering, you do see the side dormer of the house next door. It has a similar, but I mean, that's not on a front facade, but yeah.
And just a clarification question, did you say that the windows in the front and the back, the new windows, they're all double hung? The new windows that you're introducing, they're actually double hungs?
The windows on the front,
Those are
I'm sorry.
casements.
My
those are
apologies.
And no Munsons of any kind in the casements?
No.
Is that correct? Okay.
There's none in the house, and so we,
Okay.
The front, though, definitely are casements, so, yes. I'm sorry, they're all casements, my correction. We have casements on the side of the house.
Jeannie, is it possible that the rendering is a little deceiving with the proportion of the openings on the rear? They look much smaller in the elevation to me than they do in the rendering.
It could be like a sense of perspective. I don't know, if we go back to that rendering, I haven't really. Because there might, I feel like the trim, they do. I don't know if it's just the perspective, like that it's disoriented because you're looking up from the, I asked them to do a rendering from eye view at street level because the pitch even looks taller, you know, in that perspective. Because the pitch of the roof is a 712. And that rendering looks taller, but I think it's, once again, I think it's the distortion of a perspective, and because it's so high up.
You know, now that we're looking at the rendering versus the elevation, the renderings, also the trims are much narrower, right? In the elevations, there's more trim? Yeah, the windows have like, right.
I'm sorry, I'm not following you. Are you talking about the existing versus what I'm proposing, or?
The elevations versus the perspectives.
Yeah, I think
Then-
the perspective's not reading it. The goal, if you see the note, is to match existing trims, and profiles would match the existing from below. So the trim dimension and detail would match.
Maybe they didn't show the trim, and then that made the windows so much larger in the rendering.
Yeah,
Whereas
it
your
looks a little
elevation,
distorted.
your elevation has that piece of trim, which makes a difference.
It does make, we were just talking about trims earlier and the importance that makes. But when you look at it in elevation, it looks much more visually compatible than when you see it.
Okay, it's good to notice.
On both facades, right? We're talking about the perspectives for both the gable and the dormer in the front. Actually, it's even more pronounced, the difference between the perspective and the elevation on the dormer, I think.
Are there any other questions or discussion?
I don't know who said it, but maybe it was you, John. I think the gable, I don't know, the hip roof would look more consistent with the existing style of the house. I don't know what standard that is. Maybe standard 11 under construction. Someone suggests, was that you, John? I thought that could look better.
I brought up, yes, since we're adding kind of two elements, one being the rear gable and the other being the shed dormer, that maybe it would be time to match the hip on the front dormer. But I don't, for me, it doesn't rise to the level of not meeting the standard. In fact, I think all the points that are being made are valid and true for me, but I find that none of them rise to the level of not meeting a standard for me.
I would also agree. Are there any other discussion items for this case? No? Would a commissioner like to make a motion? Please?
I will.
Thank you.
For the property at 1940 Orrington Avenue in the Northeast Historic District, case 22 Pres 0240, I move that we issue a certificate of appropriateness to construct two dormer additions above the home's full second story, including a gable dormer at the front, east volume, and a shed dormer at the side, north volume, as well as alter the structure's west rear volume roof form. The applicable standards are alteration 1 through 10, and construction 1 through 4, 7 through 8, and 10 through 15.
Is there a second? Stewart seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Commissioner Ziem opposed. So the motion passed 6-1. Thank you. Okay, Moving on to election of, did you want to? Oh, Amanda, can you maybe just state what standards you wanted to?
Yeah, and maybe 11 and 12 of the construction standards. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's move on to the election of the 2023 officers. So, Cade, do you want to?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. We had 3 members who were all nominated by multiple commissioners, and we don't have any opposition, so I think it would be fine to take a vote on the slate of electors. But Commissioner Dreller was nominated as chair. Commissioner Cohen was nominated to continue serving as vice chair, and Commissioner Klein was nominated as secretary. So congratulations to all 3 of you. You all accepted, at least initially, so if, speak now or forever hold your peace. But congratulations, very well-deserved, certainly, and also, I'd like to thank Susie for her time as chair. She did an excellent job, and also Beth, your time as secretary, you did a fantastic job as well.
Would someone like to make a motion to approve the slate of electors for 2023? John?
Sure. I move that we approve the slate of electors for 2023.
Is there a second? Amanda, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Congratulations. Okay, Cade, you want to?
Yeah, I'll take the rest. The minutes of December 6th, I did receive 2 amendments, one from Chair Reinhold and one from Commissioner Klein. Those will be incorporated. I didn't receive any other comments.
Can I just, one thing, wanted to add? I was mentioning, there's a part about the safety of the materials on deconstruction. I should have emailed you. I didn't know we could do that. I just wanted to note specifically, I was talking about leaded paint. I just want to spell that out in the minutes, please.
Certainly. Okay.
So would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the noted edits?
Make
Okay.
a motion to approve the minutes of the December 6, 2022 meeting with the edits sent to Cade.
Is there a second? Amanda seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? That is, motion carries 7-0. Okay.
Okay. The next. Yep.
So
Go ahead.
sorry. I just realized that it says Preservation Commission Tuesday, December 13th.
That was one of the edits from Commissioner Klein.
Okay.
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
sorry.
Yeah. Good catch. Okay. The next 2 are just discussion items, so no action for these. I just wanted to introduce both of these, and if we have discussion on them tonight, that's fantastic. If we don't, I think send me some items for consideration that we can bring to the following meeting. But the first is just, as a best practice annually to look at the rules and procedures and also the rules of circumstance that the commission has and proposing any edits for those. There are a handful that I will propose, not a ton, but there's a few instances where the rules conflict with the ordinance itself, which is not permitted, and it's very minor things. One is, for example, when this election is supposed to take place, the rules say December, but the ordinance says January, so that things like that should be just cleaned up. But if there's any larger items someone would like to look at, now would certainly be the time. And then at our previous meeting, I think it was you, Stuart, who talked about kind of looking at the rules of circumstance and what cases are done administratively and what cases are handled at the commission level. So that'd be a good time too, just to review that. And if you have any comments, we can bring that back at the next meeting and discuss those.
I had a question too about the staff review. You used to give us your list of what you reviewed.
Yeah,
Is that something, is that is that a horrible test? to
No,
have to
it's
do?
not. It's not. It's a really easy thing to do. I did that primarily because we were reviewing more things administratively during the pandemic, and we weren't meeting as frequently. So I just wanted everyone to be aware and comfortable with what staff was approving. But that's a great best practice.
I think that was very helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know what my fellow commissioners, but it was just something to glance at that was nice to know what was happening. And I mean, it also shows how much you and Carlos do administratively, which is you should be commended for your work with that.
Susie, was that integrated into the meeting? It was an item, like at the end, right?
Yeah, I don't think that it was included in the meeting materials. It was just an attachment as like an FYI for the commission.
Okay.
That these things had been approved administratively. And you're right, it is nice to see, like, it did vary really drastically. Sometimes it'd be 5 things, sometimes it'd be, 35, 50 things. Yeah.
I mean, I would agree, just bringing that practice back, because I think part of the long-range plan, too, was, the transparency and the benchmarks, just like how many, projects were approved by staff review or versus going to the commission.
And like what the types of projects
Right,
were.
right.
I think it's helpful.
And I think the calendar would even be interesting to see. When is your busy season? When are all the roofs done? When are all the it just might data like that is just always helpful and interesting.
And the city works with a software that kind of tracks all that anyway, and it's relatively easy to export that data now, where actually when I gave you that information, it was not as easy as it is now. So that was like a separate Excel sheet that I would keep and export. But it's much easier now.
I mean, I wouldn't want to put an extensive amount of work on your plate since you're already doing it, but if it's something that's easily like exported, I think it's helpful. And then as far as comments for the rules of circumstance, that can be something that commissioners just can send you via email if they go through the list.
Yeah, I think it makes sense just to kind of have it on your radar now, and you can look at it in detail. And if you have items that you would like to talk about at the next meeting, then I can include those in a more comprehensive kind of memo that shows these are some of the things that were brought up, and then we can discuss them and deliberate them, and then take action on amending them if that's what we want to do, or adding to some of them. It's a relatively comprehensive list, but there are occasionally times where types of work and projects don't fall within some of those categories, and we just reach out and ask for advice when that happens. But if there's types of work that you've seen that isn't referenced in there, it would be nice to add that. And I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at it, but it's not a definitive necessarily. There are ones that say administrative staff reviews. There are ones that say, yes, it absolutely goes to the commission, but there's also a either or option. And in those instances, it's just kind of left up to our discretion. And then always, if something is listed as an administrative review, there is probably a handful of times each year where, for various reasons, we are not comfortable with that. So we will defer those projects back to the commission. So it doesn't mean that if we're not comfortable with something, we won't reach out and make you the determining body, because we always have that option.
There's just one thing I wanted to mention. I don't know if it really falls under this, but would love to talk about or address at some point, like I feel like it comes up a lot about zoning, to make a recommendation to zoning for major zoning relief. That's come up a couple times, like can we, can't we, should we, shouldn't we? And I don't know if there's some confusion of whether that power is even enshrined here, but yet we keep getting asked to weigh in on a recommendation. So if there is some way to clarify or get, I don't know, legal to weigh in, or I'd love if there was a little more clarity around what we need to do, like as a commission, when those projects come up for major zoning relief.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. We did reach out and get some advice. You are not obligated to provide, so that's one of the questions, is whether you're obligated to or not. You have the power to if you wish to. The standards that are related to those are not, one, they're not even enshrined in the preservation ordinance, which is a little strange. They're enshrined in the zoning ordinance. They're a little difficult to interpret, I think, to really understand what they're asking for. It essentially, I think, is saying that the commission should give, or, has the opportunity to give, and maybe it would be prudent, a recommendation on the zoning relief in instances where whatever that required or proposed relief is necessary in the interest of conservation of that building. And so I would say that probably most of what we've seen would not fit that bill. I think that it's probably intended for instances, say, where an original front porch was removed from a home. They have photo documentation that shows it used to exist, but now building that front porch encroaches on whatever the front yard setback is or something. So that might be an opportunity where the commission would say, yes, absolutely, we recommend that this be approved because it was an original feature to the home and should be reconstructed. So,
Okay.
but I agree, it's probably not as clear as it could be.
Thanks.
Do we want to talk about the annual work plan?
Yep, and then the next item, in kind of a similar fashion, I don't expect anyone to have, really robust discussion around it tonight, even though we can if someone came prepared. But as an annual kind of best practice, we should look at that 20-year plan that was just developed for this commission, that work plan, and we should try to propose one or two things that we want to accomplish in each year. And I think the 1 to 3 category, there's probably 7 to 9, I'm not really sure, that are in there right now. And I think that 3 of those are kind of already ongoing, that we kind of kickstarted as we undertook the process. But there is a handful of others that I think there's room to look at some others. So if anyone has any opinions about which of those would be important. I know Commissioner Dreller, you talked about like the newsletter was something that was very important to you. It's a wonderful advocacy effort, outreach effort. So that's something that we could do as well.
Yeah, I had a look at this. Initiative 2.1, so I'm on the last page of the packet, was, because I went back to the plan to see what the priority was for these, in addition to the amount of time that we indicated. So 2.1 was the review and update of the historic preservation ordinance was indicated as high priority, whereas 3.6, 4.1, 4.4, and 4.7, the remaining ones, was indicated as pressing. So, if we were to do 1 to 2, and that's probably realistic since we're all volunteers, some of the initiatives like 4.1 and 4.4 are the ones that I identified are like doable, and we already indicated as pressing. And if we were to do those, I think updating the historic preservation ordinance might be like a bridge too far. But maybe historic preservation ordinance, the 2.1, is higher priority than the other ones. And so maybe we focus on that. I'm not suggesting either one. I'm just putting it out there that if we were to do just one, it might be the ordinance. Whereas if we were to choose 2, perhaps the 4.1 and 4.4, which are the 2, they're like cousins in terms of education, might be a kind of suite of advocacy that we could actually achieve. Anyway, that was what I wanted to put out there. I recognize that the ordinance needs to be updated. We saw the discussion that we were having. There might be some opportunities to address some of that stuff in the ordinance, to be honest with you. Yeah. So, but on the other hand, a newsletter that kind of educates the public a little bit more might sort of like the first proposal that we had where they were replacing all the windows exactly. That was the first one. Second one. They might have gone in a different direction if we had a newsletter. So, I mean, anyway, so those were my thoughts that I brought to the table tonight.
I had a thought about, and I know it's one of the initiatives, I didn't mark which one, and I was mentioning it to some of y'all. We have some openings, I think, for commissioners on this. I don't know, 2, Cade, there's a couple openings. And then I know at one point we wanted more diversity on this commission. So I think we have an opportunity, since we have some existing openings, like to just try to have like a person of color or some other underrepresented group sit, since we do have a few openings. I thought maybe that would be something we should focus on. I don't know how many people know about the commission or know there's openings, or just mainly word of mouth. I'm not sure, how, I was thinking maybe like, I had mentioned maybe like reaching out to Shorefront, some of those organizations that we work with, or even like having you, I don't want to give you more work, or one of us go to like a fifth ward meeting or a different ward, from groups that maybe are underrepresented, and we can try to just advertise the position or just give information on it and try to see if there's any interest, if we can answer any questions, explain what the role entails, something like that.
So I had an idea about this that I was going to propose at some point, but I might as well since it's been brought up. My thought was that perhaps all of us who agree, not everybody has to, but if we agree that we want wider perspective on the commission, that we all reach out to 2 people. Just find 2 people. Just think of 2 people. It doesn't have to be even in Evanston, because those people might know people. Just if we all everyone that thinks that this is important does that, then we all of a sudden have, kind of start a conversation. And then, Kate, you and I talked about having some kind of email. Do you recall? We talked about having an email that could be sent to all of us that then we could forward to those folks that talks about what is involved in being on the commission. Yeah, so that was a thought that I had, because we all know different people. So instead of saying, let's just talk to this one group or 2 groups, if we just kind of reach out, but only if you agree.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I just think we shouldn't stop there, because our groups might be somewhat homogenous and not that different than who we see sitting here now. So I just feel like that's good. I totally agree. We should talk to neighbors, friends, whoever, but we should also, I think, look outside of our immediate circles.
Yeah, no, I was suggesting that we think about who we might want to, who might be strategic, not just any 2 people, but think about who might actually have some thought, some suggestions. Just to kind of broaden it out so that it's not just so that we're not always going to the same people all the time. Not that we wouldn't go to Shorefront or others, because they're great, but try to spread it around a little bit so that the same people don't feel like we're coming to them over and over and over, which isn't fair also.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned the ward meetings, and not just the 5th ward, but any ward meeting. Like, a lot of them are online now. I think they do monthly calls, and I'm in the 2nd ward. Even if we could, talk to our alder person and see if we can get a couple minutes on their call or something, because those are their most engaged people who are calling in or going to those ward meetings anyway, who may have more of a interest in, participating in a process like this.
The other thing is, if a letter was drafted or put together, several council members have office hours, and so just having a letter there for people that come and want, just it's an opportunity for a council member to say, hey, are you interested in this? Here's some information. I mean, that's just another way of getting in contact with people.
Yeah, Initiative 4.4 is training publication for elected officials, so that's part of it.
Okay, good discussion. Any other comments about the work plan or any other discussion items commissioners might have?
I have one more, and I'll keep it brief. I don't remember where this was, but something in the initiative about trees and removal of trees. I'm not sure how that fits in with us. I know they talked about adding that. So I'd love to see that, not necessarily here, but preservation, I feel like, and with the climate action and resiliency plan that Evanston has, I feel like the trees are such a missed opportunity. If we don't try to save them now, you cut down a 200-year-old tree, you're not going to get it for 200 years. So it just feels like, it's sort of like, it feels very urgent for me to, that's something I think we should address right away, because some of these construction projects do clear these things. I don't know how often it comes up, but, or even if the city would address it in zoning, I don't know, but I would like to see that addressed somewhere more seriously.
So it's really interesting that you bring it up. We were recently, or I was recently engaged by some staff members in the sustainability office that was very excited about aspects of this plan. They are presenting or in discussions with the Environment Board on a tree preservation ordinance. They asked if I could attend to present both that and some information on deconstruction and what that looks like. So some of these things are moving and in place, and that certainly is probably the right venue for that. And I think that initiative for us, and I think we can be a really good partner and really good ally, but I think that initiative just said to advocate for that, which I think we can do.
Any other discussion items? No, you're fine.
The only other thing we were talking before the, oh, I'm sorry.
No, sorry, go ahead.
The only other thing we were talking about before the meeting, I think it was Amanda, you were mentioning the deconstruction initiative, and whether that's something that we wanted to think about, talk about.
Yeah, so that's a similar, same topic. I'll be giving a little bit of information on trees, and I'm going to take a little bit of different perspective on that than the Environment Board will, because there's obvious environmental benefits to that, but there's also kind of these intangible character defining sense of place qualities that these trees really, they help establish the integrity of setting for our historic districts and a lot of our neighborhoods that are historic or not historic. But they also asked to give some information on deconstruction. I think that's something that is maybe not as immediate. I think that there's a lot that has to be looked at for that, but we are very lucky that we have a partner in town, the Rebuilding Exchange. A lot of communities do not have a resource that powerful that's in their backyard that's willing to take on a lot of that work. So I think it's an excellent opportunity.
Promise this is the last thing, but just talking about the Environment Board reminded me that, I mean, larger scope, I think other committees and commissions I think are having an issue too with, you know, diversity in their membership. So possibly the Equity Commission or whatever commission could, I think, address that, assist. I'm sure it's not just the Preservation Commission that's having that issue. I think it could be a citywide thing.
Yeah, there was also a webinar that I worked with the National Association of Preservation Commissions on about this topic, about diversifying our membership. It was in May, wasn't it, Kate? Yeah. So, and that was fascinating. And you might be able, if you're a member of this organization, to go and watch it again, or watch it for the first time if you're interested. NACP.
Any other comments? Carl?
I'll
you
make
do-
a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Amanda seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.